am honored today to be sitting next to you, Dr. Mohab. He is the CEO of Innovate, a major consulting firm in Egypt. Dr. Mohab has been a valued partner with Berytech. He was collaborating on numerous projects. One of these projects is the launch of Food Cluster, which has undoubtedly made waves in the agri-food industry. Currently, we have Dr. Mohab as our consultant on Lebanon Innovate. And as my colleague Yara was just mentioning, Lebanon Innovate is a 42-month program funded by the EU with the main goal of fostering innovation and facilitating technology transfer in Lebanon. Under the umbrella of Lebanon Innovate, we have several activities. One of these activities is the launch and execution of knowledge and innovation communities, each in a designated sector, one for agri-food, one for ICT, and one for healthcare. Today, we're going to discuss the knowledge and innovation communities, and I ask you, Dr. Mohab, with your experience, to tell us what are the knowledge and innovation communities and what is their significance on the market.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay. So good morning, everyone. So Al Khair. Thank you so much for having me here. Maybe I can take one step back, just giving you the context of why knowledge and innovation communities are important. 4 years ago, we were involved in developing a technology transfer strategy for Lebanon, where we were looking at ways that we can successfully commercialize technology and research from universities to the industry, and we created different type of roadmaps to accomplish this. Part of this exercise was to see what kind of gaps existed in the ecosystem in Lebanon. So some of them were related to the access of information, the availability of information, the kind of communication that happens between different stakeholders, and also, do we have actually proper processes in place to facilitate technology transfer from universities to industry, للصناعة. And we came up with that there were many gaps in that perspective. In addition, over the years, we talked with different stakeholders. So we talked, for example, with other universities, like University of San Joseph, as an example, where they say that we had a very nice success story where one of the professors came up with a nice packaging material for علبة الحمص, for example, to prolong the shelf lifetime. And I said, this is amazing, but you actually have a formal process to do more of these kind of things? And the answer was typically no. Do you have strong linkages with industry? And the answer again was no. So we talked also to business support organizations that provide technical support, business support, and the conclusion was that we identified that there were 3 primary gaps, I would say, in the Lebanese ecosystem, primarily related to the availability of information and access to information. So for example, if you ask a university, where is your strong strength, where is your critical mass, where are the strong technology and research areas, sometimes these things are not documented properly. So and it's not disseminated and it's not communicated even to the people in industry. So this was one part about the information. Second part, there were no formal structures to network, to communicate between the different stakeholders, and that was also a gap. And finally, the part related to commercialization between universities and industry, again, the process was not as strong as that we would like to. So these kind of gaps, it made us think about that we should have some kind of formal scheme, which we called the knowledge and innovation communities, that can actually act as a facilitator and a catalyst to connect these different stakeholders together. And the ultimate goal is, again, to achieve economic and social prosperity and outputs that can be valuable to Lebanon as a country. So that's what made us think about this. And we put this together in a model that we can talk more about. And so the KICs is really acting as I mentioned to you, as a formal way of facilitating, communicating, grasping information, and sharing it with different stakeholders. And I should actually mention 2 things, so if I may, in this, that this model is not new in the world. I mean, this has been applied in Europe through different type of clusters, and it's also been applied in the United States in centers of excellence. So again, the idea of the trihelix, triple helix, and the quadruple helix, where you have connections between public sector, private sector, business support organizations, and universities and research institutions.
Thank you, Mohab, for raising the gaps that are happening in Lebanon, and the existence of a knowledge and innovation community comes to an answer to address those gaps and makes those linkages. For now, can you give us an example of how these knowledge and innovation communities can work practically in Lebanon?
Okay. So let me give you maybe some specific examples of how this can actually work. So for example, when we talk about universities and research institutions, the outputs that come out of these institutions are very important, whether they are graduation projects of students, whether they are patents, whether they are technologies, whether they are research papers. This kind of information is very important to be identified and documented well, because this can be used in many different ways. Number one, this is very important to the public sector. For example, the CNRS, which is the kind of like the highest level of promoting research and technology in different universities. This is very important for a public body like CNRS, because from that kind of information, they will be able to identify the needs of the universities. They will be able to come up with better policies. They can come up with better programs. Maybe they can go and lobby to the EU or the GIZ, for example, and say, you know, these are the kind of needs that we see in our research institutions and universities. These are the kind of things that we need in terms of funding, in terms of resources. Without that kind of information from universities, it's going to be very difficult to come up with it. So KIC, what it does is that it creates that type of connection between soliciting these kind of outputs from universities and communicating that to the public sector. Also, this is very important for industry, because again, while I understand that I need to do and look into different kind of research areas and technologies inside universities, very important to align this with the needs of the industry. And therefore, doing this internal mapping for universities first is extremely important to be able to create this kind of linkage with the needs of Sana'a and of industry. And here, by the way, we don't only talk about the Lebanese industry, because perhaps the market can be a little bit small, but we're also talking about external markets. One of the really good things about Lebanon is that you have a huge diaspora community. And many of this diaspora, they are working in senior positions in many top companies in Europe and Canada and the United States. Those people who are the Lebanese diaspora, they can actually reach out to Lebanese universities and research institutions to solve many of their technological problems. So KIC also will create this kind of facilitation between both parties. Another example would be, for example, that you look at business support organizations. Like we did a mapping to some of the companies that provide intellectual property services. Okay, so for example, they help people patent technologies. They help people doing things like related to copyright, trademarks. So we came to realize, for example, that there are many really nice technologies that are in universities, and researchers want to actually protect their technology, and they don't know where to go. Some universities do have technology transfer offices. Some of them, a lot of them don't. So one of the things that KICs should do is to actually, again, create this kind of connection and facilitation between universities and these kind of business support organizations that provide IP services. iPark, for example, collaborates at iPark at the AUB. They collaborate a lot with some of these IP firms. But what about other universities? They should also have the same opportunity, and that should also be the role of KICs. Another example, if I may, is, for example, you can have also affiliate members within this KIC structure. So I'll give you an example. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has recently announced a number of different funding schemes that facilitate collaboration between industry and academia. Let me just get a quick show of hands. How many people have heard of the recent scheme that the EBRD announced a couple of weeks ago? Anybody? Okay, so I see 4 hands out of 100 people, so that's like 4%. So one of the things that KICs should be doing, or will we be doing, is that to identify these kind of financing, funding schemes that are coming from different type of donors, international organizations, and disseminate this properly with the relevant stakeholders, which in this case are research institutions and industry on the other side. And there are other things that, again, I won't... so that's kind of give you the kind of flavor of what KIC actually does.
Thank you very much for the insightful examples. So this is going to launch today. Can you tell us what kind of individuals or entities that we need to execute and start this knowledge and innovation community? Who would be part of this amazing initiative?
Any entity that sees itself as a contributor to the social and economical well-being of Lebanon certainly would be involved in such a KIC. Every KIC, every knowledge and innovation community has a particular focus. So as you mentioned, Soha, when you talk about the agri-food, we're talking about all across the value chain of the agri-food, whether it's from the agriculture side all the way until the logistics side. Any company that provides technologies, that provides products, services along the value chain of the agri-food, certainly I think would be related here. Also, universities that have critical mass related to ICT geared towards applying it to the agri-food would definitely be very much related. Or universities that have a strong agri-food or agriculture research, also those would be certainly involved here. In addition to different type of business support organizations. So Agri-Food for Agri-Tech, for example, is an example of an accelerator that is specifically focused on agri-food startups. There could be other accelerators that we talked to from the AUB, from USAC, from USG, that actually would be interested to be part of the KIC because they see as the agri-food as a priority sector. Also, business support organizations such as IPR, that when you talk about food, trademarks are very important. Patents potentially can be important when you're talking about different ingredients and related to food quality or maybe even packaging considerations. So we're talking about public sector in the form of CNRS. We're talking about business support organizations. We're talking about universities and research institutions, and certainly members of the industrial community.
Thank you, Mohab. Just in 1 minute, can you tell us the impact you see as part of your experience in establishing such knowledge and innovation communities? What would be the impact on Lebanon for the short term and the future term? How do you see it?
I think if we look at the kind of models that were applied in Europe and that were applied also in the US and Canada, again, when you talk about the academic and research institution community, certainly we're talking about more collaboration, certainly opportunities. We're talking about funding opportunities that they might not be aware of. We're talking about commercialization opportunities that they might not be. By the way, commercialization here, I'm talking about the 2 factors here. Any kind of research coming from a university or research institution can be the basis of a startup, or it could be licensed or sold as a technology to an industry partner. So both aspects are very important, and they definitely would add strong value to universities, that's for sure. And of course, from the BSO side, when you're talking about companies that provide IP services, it's good business for them, so that's obvious. And when you're talking about accelerators and incubators here in Lebanon, we want to see more research-based startups. I mean, we have wonderful startups that you can see in the demo space. Those are producing products, wonderful products, but we would like to see more of what we call the technology-based startups, research-based startups, and that's where, again, the kind of link is important between universities and research and the accelerators and incubators who take these kind of startups as a pipeline.
Thank you very much, Mohab, for joining us today.